past. So can anyone think of any that might come to mind? I am like something that that person has said. Oh, the greatest, of course. Muhammad Ali. Yes, I am the greatest. I can't do it in his accent, but it's a very, very well-known statement that he's made. I am the greatest. And he's, of course, talking about his boxing career. And certainly Jesus made some great statements that start with the very same word. And we're going to be looking at them over the coming weeks. So Jesus made many significant statements in the Gospels, and there are 7 of these actual I am statements that Jesus has made. And we're going to be looking tonight at one of them, and we're going to be looking at a little bit of the history, looking back at where this I am word has come from and what context we can draw from that. These are pretty big, bold claims by Jesus. I am. Big statement that he makes. We find them all in the book of John, in the Gospel of John, so we'll be turning there tonight. He makes these statements about 7 times. So can anyone think of any of them? Ian mentioned a couple before. Just sing them out. I am what? The way, the truth, and the life. That's one. Another one? The bread, yeah, the bread of life. Good. Another one? The true vine, good. The shepherd, the way, the truth, and the life, yep. Any others? The light to the world. The door, yeah, that was another one. So in our series, we're going to be combining the I am the good shepherd and the door for the sheep. We're sort of combining that into one, okay, just so you know. There's another one. Light to the world, we've had that. The bread, we're doing that tonight. I am the bread of life. There's one more. I am, that's correct, Ryan. We're going to have a little touch on that. But it is to do with not the death of Jesus, but what happened after his death. The resurrection and the life, that's right. Of course, that is the story where Mary and Martha are grieving the loss of their brother Lazarus, and Jesus says, do not fear, I am the resurrection and the life. Yeah, so that is the statements of Jesus. And we're going to be looking at them over the coming weeks. So I encourage you to read ahead, dwell on these statements, do some research yourself, and just really consider what they actually mean. What is Jesus saying when he says this? And what does that mean for us today? And hopefully tonight we're going to be looking a bit at that. Firstly, though, we're going to spend the first half of tonight's sermon looking back at the Old Testament. Where did this I am come from? What's so big about this statement? And then we're going to be looking tonight at I am the bread of life. That's the first statement that Jesus makes in John chapter 6. So, why is this so significant? Well, we need to go back to the Old Testament. So if you would like to join me in your Bibles, back in Exodus chapter 3. This is where God reveals himself to Moses at the burning bush encounter. And so we're going to read this, Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 to 15, the encounter that Moses has with God at the burning bush. So let's read along. Now, Moses was keeping the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led his flocks to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sign. Why is the bush not burned? When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. When he said this, then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen their oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? He said, but I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. We can read the last little bit. And God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am able to be remembered throughout all generations. The I am statement that God makes. I am. Moses here, I don't know if you picked it up, but he anticipates a question that the Israelites are going to ask him. The question is, what is God's name? What is God's name? It's probably a question that Moses had as well. Moses didn't know what God's name was. What is God's name? And so if God was to be worshipped, as God said, on that mountain, when they came out of Egypt, if God was to be worshipped there, he must have a name to be worshipped by. How are the people to address God? A personal name not only forms, a form of address, like a person's name, like I might talk to you. Not only is it a form of address of a person, but it's also a description of character and a bit of an insight into a person's personality. And so Moses is hanging out for the answer here. He's like, he wants to understand who God is. What is God's name? How can God's name help him to describe God to the people of Israel? And so God's reply to this question is not really like a name that the Egyptian gods might have, like, for example, Ra, the god of the sun, or Hathor, the god of drunkenness. It's not this like descriptive name, the god of something in particular. God responds with just this simple one statement: I am. I am. A statement that maybe when we first think about it, like we might think, this doesn't really describe God in any way. Like how are we getting anything out of this about God? What do we understand about God? This doesn't describe who God is. Well, I think tonight we'll discover that it does. There is a lot that we can learn about God with this simple I am statement. Names today don't really mean too much to us. I don't know, everyone here has a name. We all have names and we talk to each other. We call each other by name. But names in today's culture don't really carry, I don't know, as much meaning as what they used to, probably in biblical times at least. For example, the name Dale means water crossing or ford or something like that, okay? It's probably got other meanings in other cultures, but that's sort of the one that I grew up with. So does this mean that I love to plunge my four-wheel drive into the muddiest, dirtiest water around Gladstone? Not normally, no. I know that this is true for some people in the room tonight, although I don't see Luke Bolzer here tonight, but Ethan definitely is here. So I know that might be true for some people, but for me personally, when I go four-wheel driving, I like to have my starter motor and alternator functional at the end of the trip, compared to when it gets plunged into the muddy water. And so names today don't really carry, the significance of the meaning behind them. Like, Dale, Ford Crossing, Water Crossing doesn't really mean that much to me personally. However, biblical names brought a huge significance to the person, information about the person, who they were, who they represented, what they were about, and what part they played in society often. And so God responds to Moses from this burning bush to declare his name as I am. I am who I am. I am. That's it. I am. And so this does tell us something about God. It tells us, I think, three things. Probably much more, but three big things. God doesn't use anything to describe himself. He doesn't say, I am like this, or I am like that. He just says, I am. God doesn't need to draw on anything to describe who he is. He just is. The Lord, our God, is not defined by anything other than himself. Pretty cool. It reveals God's self-existence. And this is a big statement because God doesn't need anything else to depend on. He is self-existent. I think secondly, it reveals God's eternal nature. There's no beginning, there's no ending to God. He is the source of all life and he's the sustainer of all things. God is eternal. And thirdly, I think the big thing that it reveals about who God is, this statement, I am, reveals that God is sovereign. He is all-powerful. He is the one who controls all things and has the power to do whatever he pleases. I mean, even the picture of the burning bush itself is an image of God. Like it's self-existing. It's not being consumed. Eternal. There's a link, I think, to the burning bush, the physical burning bush, and what God is trying to get across to Moses. I am. I don't need anything else to draw on for my existence. I just am. I am who I am. And so all of this imagery, all of this is wrapped up in who God is, in the name I am. Interestingly, the Hebrew word for this I am that God uses here is a lot like the word Yahweh, which finally in the Old Testament was used and translated as the Lord. And so wherever we see in the Bible the words the Lord in capital letters, that is referring to this word in the Hebrew that God uses of himself. And so this big, bold statement from God is a self-disclosure of who God is. It's showing himself to his people, giving himself a name, revealing his self-existence and his eternal and sovereign nature, all in this name, I am. So that's a bit of the history, where this I am has come from, and the punch that is behind it, the power that rests on it. And so now as we move